Everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh my, do we have another outstanding show for you today. I've got the Price Whisperer with me. Yeah, he wrote this book. His actual name is Sjofors, and it's a holistic approach to pricing power. Now, listen, let me just say this about pricing, because I learned I'm not any different than any other business. I struggle in my coaching practice in terms of how to price, and probably like most of you out there, you're out there doing the same thing I'm doing. So I'm guessing. That's the truth. That if I'm going to be completely transparent. I'm guessing. I'm guessing that that's the right price for what I charge. Mm-hmm. Right? The problem is I may be not really giving pricing at the value that I should be pricing at.
Yeah.
And that could be a problem for you out there, right? I mean, there's many of you who watch this show, right? All over the world, you watch this show. You're in a variety of industries. I get people writing the time, right? And I know your industries that you're in. Many of you are in service industries. Most of you are in service industries, real estate. You're in financial planning. You're in all, and you're constantly asking questions like, I don't know if I'm charging the right price. I don't know what I'm doing out there. Well, here's what's going to happen today. What's going to happen today is Per is going to be with us. He's going to break this down. All right. He's going to help us figure this out, because the truth of the matter is, after reading this book and then going through it again a second time, I still got lots of questions. So before we get to Per, right, you know what we do here every week on the show, right, is I walk you through the 4 areas of your life, right? We're 4-part people. We're physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people. And if we're not working on ourselves every day, right, then what happens is, you know what, if we're not growing, we're dying. That's the truth, right? So we evaluate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in all 4 of these areas. So for example, physically, if you were to evaluate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding, how would you evaluate what you're doing when it comes to exercise, eating right, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, right? By the way, if you think you can price by getting no sleep, you're probably going to price it wrong anyway. And if you think that you're not taking care of your body, that somehow you're going to price right, you're wrong. So 5 being average, what's your number? All right, first number. Second number is your intellectual, mental number, right? Now, here's the thing. You can't sit on a couch thinking that information is going to somehow magically come at you and you're going to somehow magically absorb it, and that somehow what's going to happen is you're going to grow in knowledge and understanding and wisdom of what you're doing. You have to be an active participant in your knowledge and wisdom and growth in whatever area. And by the way, I'm going to just tell you something about Per. He's one of those guys who's constantly growing and learning, and because I'm telling you, this book is really chock full of stuff. I mean, it's not only pricing and business and economics, but it's psychology. It's encompasses it all, because I can tell he's always growing and learning. Yeah. Right? And by the way, the best way to grow and learn, read books. It really is the best way to grow and learn. Right? Read. Right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing growing in your intellectual area? All right, that's 2 numbers. Second number is your emotional area. And Daniel Goleman, and even Daniel Kahneman, have talked a lot about emotions and how we operate in the world. And Daniel Goleman, especially with regards to emotional intelligence and emotional quotients. And the truth of the matter is, we can break that down in 2 ways simply. How well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure? And then how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of others? Now, both of those are extremely important, but when it comes to pricing, if you can understand the emotional mindset of another human being, it's going to give you quite an advantage in pricing. Because our emotions we think that we do things rationally, but the truth of the matter is we do things emotionally, and then we make up a rational explanation for why we did things emotionally.
Very true.
Right? Yep. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing emotionally? And then finally, the spiritual area, right? A lot of people say, well, I'm not really all that spiritual. I'm not a spiritual person. We're all spiritual. Folks, we all live by faith on some level. We push the button on our car believing it's going to start. We take a sip of the coffee in the morning believing it's not poisonous. We sit in the chair believing it's not going to collapse. We walk across the street light when it says walk, and we believe that no car is going to hit us. And the truth of the matter is there's always a spirit inside us that can drive us beyond our physical, mental, and emotional part of us. There's that human spirit that we talk about. And what brings you back to centeredness in the midst of your chaos and in the midst of circumstances that are out of control. I mean, maybe it's God, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's nature, maybe it's something else. And then the question is it working for you? Right? That's the question. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate your spiritual area? Well, those 4 areas are like the air in the tires of your car, right? If one of your tires is low, what happens? The car veers. If 2 tires are low, it makes it real difficult to move the car. If all 4 tires are low, you're going to ruin the car, right? So we got to bring them up to the right height. And somebody who does that, his name is Per Sjofors, and he is the founder and CEO of Sjofors and Partners Incorporated in Los Angeles. He's used pricing as a lever to turn around several European and U.S. companies in his 35 years of executive management experience. He's also a member of the Forbes magazine Business Council, member of the C-Suite Network, and most recently, he is recognized as one of the top 50 global thought leaders and influencers on sales in 2023. He's been quoted repeatedly in the financial press, including Inc. magazine, The Street, Fortune magazine, Industry Week, Business Insider, and the Financial Times. And he joins us today with his current book, The Price Whisperer, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, and welcome to the first time, and certainly not the last time, probably, Per Sjofors. Per, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jay. And what a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, I love this book. This was a challenger for me. I'm not going to lie. I was challenged by this book because you called me out at least on 6 different occasions in this book that I got it wrong. So I have to say thank you for that. I think, though, where I want to start is because you, in the introduction of the book, you tell the story of Pablo Picasso in Paris, France, having a bite of lunch. And I think it would be important because I think that story sets the tone for this book, because I think there's a lot we could pull from there. So go ahead, tell the story.
Yeah, the story here is that, and to be honest, I really think this is a story. I don't really think it happened, but it doesn't matter, you know. What happened was that there was this American tourist identified Picasso sitting at a cafe in Paris, and eventually mustered strength to walk up to him and says, Mr. Picasso, obviously in French, right? Mr. Picasso, what wonderful to see you. Can you please draw a picture of me, right? I'll pay anything you want, right? And Picasso then took up his sketchbook, scribbled a little, a few lines on the sketchbook, tear out the paper, and said, "Here, madame, that'll be 5,000 francs." To which the answer was, "What? It only took you 30 seconds. How can it be 5,000 francs?" Right? "No, madame," he said, "it took a lifetime." Right? And that's the learning here, right? Anybody could have done the same sort of sketches in 30 seconds or a minute or whatever it was, but that's not what you paid for, right? You paid for the value, right? Or maybe didn't pay, and if we have this situation, there's a couple of things to consider. First off, they should have agreed on the price prior.
right.
That's the very, very basic, right? Secondly, I mean, the woman could have said, "No, I'm not going to pay 5,000 francs." And consequently, Picasso would just have ripped up the paper and tossed it out, and that was it, right?
Right.
Or he could have said, to defend his pricing, he could have said 5,000 francs today. In 10 years, it's going to be worth 15,000 francs. And it's a real Picasso, right? And you're going to hang it on the wall at home. You're going to frame it. You're going to hang it on the wall at home. You're going to have your friends and your neighbors coming in, oogling the drawing, and you're going to be semi-famous in your circle because you have a real Picasso drawing of you.
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
And so two outcomes, either that drawing is crumbled, or Picasso defends it, and she accepts the 5,000 francs, right?
Right. Right. I
And
mean, right. I mean, if you think about that for a second, what you just said there was, okay, you paid 5,000 francs today, but it's going to be worth 15,000 francs in 10 years.
yeah,
Right. And we're paying for more than just the 30 seconds.
it's a lifetime. You're not paying for 30 seconds. You're paying because it's Picasso.
Right.
You're paying because he is famous. You're paying because not only is he famous, but he's this woman mustered strength or to actually walk up to him and recognize him. You're paying for all these things, and I mean, you can call Picasso a brand, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're paying for that brand.
Right. So I love that story because it illustrates the very thing that I think we all struggle with as business owners or entrepreneurs or even CEOs, no matter what size your company. And that is I don't know for sure if I know what my value is.
Yes.
And I don't know what price to put on that value. And this is where your book, I thought, was so beautifully written and so beautifully done. And so I want to jump right into chapter 1, which is entitled A Sense of Urgency and Pricing Power. And you say a company's resulting profit comes from only 3 variables: total cost of its entire operation, the volume of sales, and the price of the product or service it sells. And you have this equation that is price times sales, in parentheses, minus cost equals profit. Talk us through that a little bit and how we need to start thinking about that.
Well, first off, if we step back a little bit, the most companies look at their entire operation, whether you're a small company, whether you're a one-man band, whether you're a Fortune 500. Companies typically only look at sales volume, right? And sometimes revenue. But there is a famous quote of, I can't remember the name, but it's a former CEO of General Motors. And what he said, this is back in the 60s, he said something that if we lose 0.5% market shares, heads are going to roll, right? But if we turn from profitability to not profitability, nobody cares, right? And he's absolutely right. Companies in general are hell-bent on market share, on sales volume, and instead of profits. But if you think about it, it is profits that drives every company, right? And
you can't survive without it.
Because eventually, if you don't have profits, you are going to either your investors are going to lose patience, and you have to become profitable. Or if you can't become profitable, your company is either going to be sold at a hefty discount, or it's going to fold, right?
Right.
There's only two choices, right? And in terms of those 3 variables, cost of operation, sales volume, and price. For pricing has the highest leverage on profitability, right? And what I mean with that is that if you do a thought experiment and think of your company as an average company. Well, I mean, no company is average, but in the average world, if you can muster in this thought experiment, if you can muster to increase your sales volume with 1%, profitability is going to go up 3.5% for an average company. If you can reduce your cost with 1%, profitability is going to go up with 5.5%. But if you can increase your price with 1% or decrease your discounting with 1%, profitability goes up 11.3%. Now, this is for an average company, and depends on your current margins. It's going to be different for every company, you know, because every company has a different profit margin and so forth. But just to amuse myself, I went into, I think it was Yahoo Finance, and I just randomly picked a dozen or so companies, and I did this very simple calculation that's in my book, right? And what I found was that a 1% increase in price for these companies would increase profitability with anywhere between about 5% to about 45%. If Amazon would increase their price with 1%, their profit margin will more than double.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. 1%.
1%.
Wow. Wow. See, this is the thing. You know, I think we're so bent on trying to go, I need to make some sort of big, huge adjustment. And what you're telling me is small adjustments create bigger profits. And I'm gonna ask a question that you ask in your book, and because I'm sure there's people out there asking this. Well, Per, if prices increase or discounting decreases, won't this lead to a loss of sales volume?
Nope. Well, the right answer, of course, is that it depends.
Okay.
And it depends on where your current prices are. It depends where you where competition is. It depends on how you can defend your value proposition and so forth. In most cases, and one of the recommendations that I always do is any company should always do a couple of percent price increases per year at least, right? A couple of percent, nobody cares about, right?
Right.
If it's more, people do care about it. I mean, just the other day, Spotify decided to increase their price with about 10%, and I got a not very good explanation on why, because and it's really interesting, I think, because if you look at how Apple is obviously one of these companies who excel when it comes to pricing. They're the high price market leader, right?
Right.
But what they do is every time they communicate with their potential clients, they justify the price.
Right.
I mean, if you look at any of their keynotes, which they do a couple of times a year, you know, it's typically early June for a technical one, and then end of September for the iPhone, and then typically early January for computers, right? And they spend an enormous amount of time telling people how great they are, right?
Right.
And they always back it up with, you know, we have sold more of this and we have sold more of that, and we have happier customers than this, and they all back it up, right? And this, and I actually want to circle back to the Picasso story, and I want to tell you a personal story here. I'm not Picasso, right? But
That I'm aware of.
but I used to live in London, and in May, me and my wife went back there for a nostalgia trip, and we stayed in a hotel in the area where we used to live. And you know, as we stepped off the plane after an 11-hour flight, and you know, an hour in immigration and another hour in a taxi into the hotel and stuff like that. And we had a very friendly receptionist who checked us in at the hotel. And at the end of that little process, she said, "And do you want to buy breakfast?" Right? It's not included in your room, and it's going to be £17 a day. So what did we do? Well, every purchase decision is done in context, with references, right? And like you said, it is always an emotional decision. So what that brought in mind was breakfast at a sort of cheap or so American hotel, right?
Right.
Which is awful coffee in a styrofoam cup, right? And some very sweet pastries in a plastic bag, right? And so that's what's came into mind, and then we said, all right, so this is breakfast, and that is £17. No, thank you. So we said, no, we're not going to buy breakfast. But after 3 days or 4 days or something like that in this in this hotel, we've sort of exhausted all the local cafes. So we said, $17 is £17. How bad could it be? And if it's really bad, well, then we don't go back again. And we went down to the restaurant, and it was a beautiful room, and the selection of this breakfast, there was a buffet. The selection was absolutely spectacular, right? The quality was outstanding. The service unbelievable, right? It was also almost empty. That's why? Because they didn't deliver a value proposition.
Right.
Right.
Because if they would have just said, hey, this is what breakfast is going to be like. Let me give you the experience. Let me share the experience with you. Let me tell you what's going to be. This is what we serve. Matter of fact, here's a small card of all the menu items that we put up there on.
Yeah, exactly. Or they could have had something on their website. They could have had a sign in the room. They could have had a little flyer they gave me.
Right. And by the way, we serve Gavalia coffee. Whatever.
Well, that's also, it was the best coffee we had during the whole trip.
Oh my gosh. His name is Per Sjofors. The book is entitled The Price Whisperer, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, my sponsors, I just want to talk about that for a second, and that's Epic Physical Therapy. And whether you're recovering from an injury or surgery or suffering everyday aches and pains, perhaps you're a professional athlete, because they do serve professional athletes. You just want to improve what you're doing. Listen, the epic relief, the epic recovery, the epic results that you're going to get, you cannot find anywhere else. Go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors for more than 38 years. They've been helping people transition in life. And you say, well, what does that mean? Well, listen, every place you've ever lived has been a transition in your life. And they've been helping thousands of people all over the world make that life transition, removing as much of the stress as they can possibly from their end to help make that transition as smooth as possible. So when you're ready for a smooth transition, whether you're selling your home or buying your home, start with Linda Craft Team Realtors. That's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Per Sjofors and the book, The Price Whisperer, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. We're just getting started here and had a lot of fun in chapter 1. And yes, that was a pun, and that was intended. So I want to move to chapter 2, because I think it's really important that we talk about behavioral economics here. Yes. Because I don't think, because we're so arbitrary in our pricing, I don't think we understand the malleability of buyers. And I don't think we have a good handle on that. And I think we should. And by the way, I just want to say to you that what a great, refreshing lesson of reading through every one of these people that you mentioned. And there's hundreds more that you could have mentioned in terms of behavioral economics, but the ones that you mentioned were so powerful and so good. So let's just give people a brief introduction to behavioral economics and why it's so important to pricing.
Well, it's behavioral economics is it was really started by this guy called Veblen but actually earlier, yeah, Veblen in the early 1900s. He was one of the leading intellectuals at the time, and one of the things that he found was that, and he did this in office. This was office supplies to to offices at the time. I don't know what that supply was. I guess it was paper and quilt pens or whatever, But but what he found doing research was very interesting. Actually, he found that the price of those products affects the sales volume in a surprising way. Meaning that if the price is too low, sales volume goes down. And that is something that's called expectation bias. So whenever we are being presented with a price, that price sets an expectation of the quality and benefit of whatever we're about to buy. And whether it's B2B or B2C, it sets an expectation. And we've all been there, right? We hold something in our hands, either physically or metaphysically, and we said, I kind of want to buy this, but at this price, can it be any good?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so Veblen created the what did you call it? The common law of business balance, right? Which essentially means you get what you pay for.
Right. Well, he's
And
responsible for evolutionary economics and conspicuous.
yeah, he started it, and then it was picked up by a guy called Singer, and Singer then continued to really understand the decision behavior. And one of his key teachings was that our purchase decisions are always made in context, always made in with references, and those references can come from the seller, right? Like in my hotel story, right? Without references, I had to use my internal references. Like in the Picasso story, there was no references being provided by Picasso, right?
Right.
And therefore, the buyer in the Picasso story had to use her own references, which was, this was only 30 seconds, or this was only 60 seconds, or whatever it was, So
the same was true in your story with the breakfast.
Exactly, yes.
You had your own reference.
Correct.
Which was, this has been my experience with breakfast at a hotel.
Yeah. And because the seller didn't provide a reference, didn't provide a value proposition. And those internal references that we always have is called heuristics, is anything and everything we've ever heard of of the alternatives to what we are about to buy, right? Obviously, what we experienced more frequently makes a difference, and also what we experienced in that range of product or services recently has more impact than what we experienced further away in time. And the next guy within behavioral economics is yeah, sorry,
Daniel Kahneman.
Kahneman, yeah, exactly, yeah, and he continued to work on Singers, and he said that the decision behavior consists of two pieces. One, when you actually decide which references you should use, and then the actual use of the references. And it's a faulty process.
Right.
It is a very faulty process because we are not perfect, right? We're not robots.
We're really risk averse.
Yes, and that's also something that Kahneman found, was that the willing to the risk of making the wrong decision influence our buying decision 2.25 times more than our expected benefit.
Yeah, and that blows me away. That we have a mindset a preservation mindset that says I would rather preserve and not make the error than go for the opportunity.
But this, if you think about what this means, right? This is the reason why branding makes a difference, because branding or a brand is a promise of a certain quality and a certain benefit and a certain consistency. So branding takes away much of that that fear of making the wrong decision. Okay. Even if you're,
that's why your brand has to be, you got to get your brand right.
That's right. That's why you need to have your brand right. And it also, branding also works in the sense that the more frequent you are being exposed to a brand, the more impactful it is in terms of mitigating that perceived risk of making the wrong decision. And we're talking about anything here from, buying a packet of gum to a new car or a new house, right?
Yeah, it's called, in psychology, we call it the mere exposure effect.
Yeah.
The more that we expose you to something, the more you develop a preference for it over time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's the same in B2B as it is in B2C. Right. And
people don't want to see that though, Per. People want to think that B2B and B2C are two different things. And it's at the end of the day, it's the human who makes the decision.
Correct. Absolutely. And even with a few exceptions in B2B, right? For example, there should, in theory, there should be no human decisions made when you sell to government agencies, for example. They are supposed to always. but the point is that even if when you're in let's say you do a bid for something, right? And the buyer in B2C is going to always think about things like, how was the prior experience with this particular vendor? Was it any good or better than experiences with other vendors? Do I really believe they're going to be able to support the product or service I'm buying the way that I want it to be supported? What is my personal experiences dealing with the individuals in the company, right? Let me tell you a story about that. We did a project for a digital agency a few years back, and the CEO came to us and he said, "We're really very good. We're closing this Fortune 500 companies left and right, and they're so important for us. So we put our vice president as the account manager, right? And we keep them for a little while, half a year, something like that, and then they don't renew their services." Now, I was dealing with that same vice president, right? And she was a fairly young, fairly attractive woman, right? And once we really got to know each other, she started to develop so foul language, right? That and I'm not sensitive to that, but it became painful, right, to deal with her, only because she couldn't say a single sentence without using language that you don't want to hear, certainly not in a business situation, right? So that was the reason that they closed these big multi-million-dollar deals for doing digital marketing, and they dealt with this woman, and she just chased them away.
It's little things, but it's little things like that that we don't consider that can absolutely wreck your price.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in this particular case, price was not the issue,
right?
But but it's little
It
things
wrecked
like,
your business. I mean, because you couldn't even get to a price because it wrecked the business.
yeah, exactly, yeah. But what you want to do in your company is that you want to look through the company through a pricing lens, right? Because, and this is the reason. I mean, this is really what my book is about. You know, a holistic view on pricing power means that companies need to understand, which most don't, that everything you do in your company affects how you can price, right? And if you think that pricing lives in a vacuum, you're going to fail, you know, with your pricing. You're going to end up being a commodity with razor thin margins, and that doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me, you know.
No. And when we talk about behavioral economics in this aspect of a behavioral economics, right? And we talk about how every detail, and you talk about details in the book. You bring it up several times. That every detail in your business is going to have some effect on your price, or how much you can, as Richard Thaler said, nudge theory, right? How much
Exactly.
how much we can.
Richard Thaler, yes. Yeah.
You're right. And these are all important things. I mean, you even talk about Dan Arrowley, who I'm connected to on LinkedIn, and he's right here, next to me at Duke University because I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of expectation bias, because here's what you described to me. You described expectation bias. When you walked into that room with this vice president, you walk in with an expectation of what you're going to get and what your expectations are of this company. And then then you're in the room, and then you're going, nope, because now you had a reference, you had a schema, you had your reference in your head, you had an expectation of what was going to happen, and then all of a sudden you didn't get it, and what happens? There's no sale.
Yeah, exactly. And the setting the right expectations, and that's again going back to what behavioral economics is, that we as humans, you, I, and all our customers, right, are we're not perfect,
Right.
We can be manipulated. We can be manipulated in a good way, we can be manipulated in a bad way.
Yep.
Which is obviously why advertising works.
Right, yeah.
Because advertising is manipulation, right?
Right.
It's why positioning, corporate positioning makes a difference. It's because the way you present yourself makes a difference. Even your brand, your company name makes a difference. Your logo makes a difference, right? And I mean, it's some of these differences are minute, some are not.
Right.
I mean, we have experience of knowing companies who say we're going to go to market with this particular company name when we work for startups, and find that there are other company names that will lead to 25% higher sales volume, right? At 20% higher prices.
Here's the thing that comes out of this, and this comes from chapter 3, and that is, it's understanding that we can influence our customers' decision landscape.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What is it? Because I don't think we understand. I think we think that customers, depending on what a service or a product that you're selling, this is where the customer is at. We can't move them, but right, and so we have to keep our price here, because if we raise it, then we're going to be in problems. Right. And if I discount too much, I'm not going to have a business. So I need to keep my price just right here, because my customers aren't going to move. But that's not true, is it?
That is not true at all. And the most effective way, and this goes back to that every purchase decision is made in context. with references. And there's something called price anchoring. Sometimes it called decoy pricing. Sometimes it calls it calls price imaging. There's all the same thing, and it is all about presenting to the customer who's about to make a purchase a price that is considerably higher than whatever that customer is about to buy in a related what you call it, a related field, but not exactly the same product or exactly the same service, right? And the most brilliant, I'm not sure if I think I cover this in the book, but the most brilliant way that I have ever seen of this price anchoring is when Apple came out with the watch. So they came out with the first iteration of this watch. It was $349, but they have had exactly the same electronics in a golden cage for $17,000. And what happened was, I mean, the watch was a big thing, right?
Right.
There was a lot of articles written about it and all these different things. And what these journalists did, they always wrote about the audacity of Apple to sell the same electronics for $17,000 or for $349, whereas the only difference was the actual case. And of course, when people looked at this, 17,349, 17,349, that 349 became more and more and more affordable.
Right. It sure did. His name is Per Sjofors. The book, The Price Whisperer, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. We're having fun. We got one more segment to go. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, Epic Physical Therapy. You hear me talk about them all the time, right? Listen, I love them, and I know the owners, and they're fantastic, and all their staff is absolutely outstanding. Listen, here's the thing. They will develop a treatment program that's customized for you, but they're also trained in the most comprehensive cutting-edge treatment that's available. They do things like blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping. That's just a few. And they have all the latest top-of-the-line equipment, like the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill, Normatec compression sleeves, my favorite, the Game Ready. Listen, when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, epic results, don't look any further. Go to epicpt.com. It's EPICPT.com. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad that you did. And then Linda Craft at Team Realtors. Listen, I talk about them 38 plus years in the business of real estate, but really, I'll tell you what makes them really, really special is that their very first customer from 1985, her very first customer comes back and sees her today. Still does. Why? Because she says she's a legend when it comes to customer service, as is her team. So listen, I want to tell you something. No matter where you're at in the world, you can start with them. They know the best professionals in your area because they're unaffiliated. They're privately owned and operated. So if you want an unbiased opinion of who's the best professional in my area that I could find to help me buy or sell my home, start with Linda Craft Team Realtors. It's real easy. Just go to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend, Per Sjofors. The book, The Price Whisperer, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power, which I am thoroughly enjoying. And evidently so are you, because we've had a number of people who've been writing in saying, this is great. Wow, this is great information. I even had previous other authors who've been on the show who are watching the show going, this is really good stuff. So you just need to know that your own former authors who've been on the show are cheering your praises here, Per.
It's wonderful to hear. Yeah,
it really is. So while we're in our last segment and we only we're down to the end here, I think we probably need to talk about how do we arrive at the right price, especially like if we're a small business, because that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I know that you talk about in the book that we could do. There's research that can be done, and some of this stuff can be quite expensive, and oftentimes we make a huge mistake because we only evaluate the customers that we currently have. We don't evaluate the people who aren't buying from us.
Which is the most important thing, right?
Right. So right, which is the most important part of it. And so how do and I brought it up in the intro. Oftentimes we're just guessing.
Yeah.
So help us try to pull the guesswork out of it so that we can arrive at the right price.
Well, there's a way you can do this. If you're a small business owner or a coach or one-man band or small business, and we've already talked about that. Price sets an expectation of benefit and quality, right? And so that is one data point, if you like. And of course, another data point is that people can't afford it, right? So what you want to do is that you want to go out to your market, right? And you want to find at least 25 potential buyers. Those potential buyers are not going to be your current prospects. They're not going to be your current customers. They're certainly not going to be friends or family, but there's going to be people that could be customers to your company for whatever reason. I mean, if this is consumer stuff, you can go to your local Starbucks and ask people, can I ask you a couple of questions, right? If it's B2B, it may be a little bit more difficult, but there's LinkedIn and other channels where you can find potential buyers. And then what you do is that you describe your product or your service, and you do this specifically to talk about the benefits, the value proposition, right? And then you ask these folks, those 25 at least folks, 2 questions. And phraseology here is really important. So the first question needs to be, now that you understand my product or my service, what is the price that you think is so low that you think we are over promising and is going to under deliver, and therefore you are not going to buy? Right?
Interesting. You start with the price too low.
Yes. And then you say to the same person, and now let's look at the flip side. Consider that the product or service is going to be better than you expect, that we are under promising and going to over deliver. What is the price that is still so expensive that it's over your budget, that you won't buy for that reason, right? So now you have 2 data points, a low data point and a high data point. And then you average these 2, and you have the span of where your pricing should be. It's not perfect, but it's much better than guessing. And then, so you obviously, if there's somebody that is completely out of whack, saying that, yeah, I'm happy to buy this pen for $1 million, you just ignore those, right? But
well, maybe if I could sell the pen for $1 million, I'll sell the 1.
but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so when you average these 2 data points, you have the span of where your prices should be, and then of course you want to put them towards the high end of that span, right?
Okay.
Now, if you can continue this, right, and you get another 25, maybe another 50, maybe another 75, and you know something about the people that you talk with, maybe demographics if it's consumers, maybe industries if it's business to business, titles if it's business to business, then you can start looking at what does this title, what is the span for this title versus what is the span for that title.
This is interesting to me because I found this interesting when you talked about it in the book, because I used to do survey research when I was in graduate school in psychology. And, what we often don't think about is segmenting the actual potential consumer.
Yeah.
So what we do is we typically do it off of demographics, but there's also a thing that we call psychographics.
Yeah.
right? That we can segment, because if we know what it is that they are interested in, what they take action on, those type of things psychologically as well as demographically, now you've got segmentation within the buyer that we can better tailor whatever we're selling to that particular demographic, psychographic.
Yep. And the customer targeting is absolutely crucial.
Critical.
Yeah. And you know, if you can't segment your customers and really understand which segments most value whatever you sell, and therefore allow you to have more profitable prices. If you don't do segmentation, you're going to try to boil the ocean, you know, and especially if you're a small company, that's a hard task, you know.
Right.
And there's another thing that is really important when it comes to this, and that is that, and this goes back to what I said. First of all, you can never ever ask somebody what they're willing to pay, never ever, because they're going to lie, right?
Right.
You can't. And there's a phrase called buyer liar, right? Meaning,
yes, there is. There's buyers are liars. We say that often. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, just to and then people go out and they talk to their customers but they believe everything they hear.
Right.
And I trying to illustrate that. Imagine you're about to buy a new car, right? And you go to the dealership. They have the model that you want, and you have a specific color in mind, you know. Would you say to the car salesman, yeah, but if you have it in white, I'll pay you another $2,000? No,
we wouldn't do it.
What you're going to say is that if you have it in white, then you knock another $1,000 off the price, I'll buy it.
Right, it's the opposite.
Yeah,
right.
But it's that, and then if that car dealership believes all the car salesmen who said I needed more discounts, you just shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Per, we've done our hour.
Oh, already.
I know it's gone really, really fast. You've been terrific.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it. And we never got into, but you could say it. Please don't discount.
Don't discount.
Don't discount. That's a failure. Discounts are failures. Tell people how they get a hold of you, because I would love for them to reach out to you and talk to you.
We've said it many times here. You've said it many times, actually. And that is The Price Whisper. Just Google The Price Whisper, and I have a YouTube channel. I have a TikTok channel. I do a lot of writing in all different channels, and The Price Whisper and Google are good friends.
That's awesome. And I'm going to say one other thing that we didn't get to, but instead of saying good, better, best, just go best, better, good.
That's correct.
I'm just going to say that. Stay with me, Per. Hey, folks, this is the show. You know what I say to you every week, and that is this: you're in control of 3 things in your life: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. I know your circumstances can be tough, but you can always control your attitude. You can always determine how excellent you're going to be by your effort. And even though you may be getting knocked down, you have a choice of getting back up again. Take advantage of those 3 things, because those are within your power. I'll be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book. It's going to be another great show. As I say to you every week, and it's this: listen, you got a lot of choices. You chose us. Thank you for doing that all over the world. Whether you're watching us on DBTV, or whether you're doing us by podcast or listening to us on radio, thank you so much. If you're listening to us podcast, I ask you, you know what? Would you please give us a positive review? And if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. That would be awesome. As I say to you all over the world, you know what that is. Ciao, everybody.